What's up, everybody? This is Ryan here, and I'm just going to talk about motivation and being consistent. The main topic here is going to be how to stay motivated as a programmer, but the things I'm going to mention are basically ways in which I stay motivated in all kinds of things like meditation, exercise, and so on, just really trying to become a better person. So, there's kind of three things that I suggest you sort of think about, or this is at least how I like to frame this. So really, there's what I think of as a mechanical problem. There is like a psychological problem, and then there is a structure problem. And I'll kind of break those three things down. So let's start with the mechanical problem. This first thing is basically, are you taking care of your meat vehicle, as Joe Rogan calls it, which I think is a great way to describe a human body. I know for myself, there's a lot of things that I have to do every day and not do every day to make sure that my brain is functioning well and I'm not tired all the time. I feel I actually have a particularly difficult time with this, so I need to be on top of this. So I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here, but really what I'm saying is you need to be keeping track of the things you do yesterday or several days ago, which lead to you feeling unmotivated and not necessarily unmotivated, just lack of energy and a lack of focus. So, what I look to is, am I sleeping well? Am I eating things which don't cause issues for me? I know for me, if I eat very large meals, I'll tend to be unmotivated and incapable of focusing for a couple hours after that meal, which sucks for me because I love food. And also, there's certain foods I know if I eat them, they will tend to make me sort of brain foggy and I'll have difficulty focusing. For me, that's typically if I eat like a lot of carbs, like bread or pizza or stuff like that. I don't know, some people actually can eat that kind of way and feel totally energetic and sharp all the time. All I'm really saying here is do that analysis for yourself. The other thing you might want to look into is nutritional imbalances. Like I'm not here to give you qualified advice like an MD, but I do supplement vitamin D. I do really try to make sure that I'm hydrated and I watch my electrolytes. Probably you don't want to hear that kind of crap, so let me jump into the other one of the other things that I mentioned. So that's sort of like a mechanical problem. You're physically not giving your body what it needs to be performing optimally. The second thing is like a psychological problem, and really what this for me kind of comes down to is a lack of direction, essentially, not really having a clear goal or not really knowing what the intermediate steps to get from where you are now to that goal is. Now, the truth is, I think a lot of people put too much uh, stock into having this kind of a goal. When I get to the other thing, I'll kind of explain in more detail why I don't think having goals is actually as important as a lot of people think. But it is good to have like a general direction in which you're moving. And it is good, I think, to have periods in your life where you just sort of stop and analyze, okay, what is important to me right now? What direction do I want to head in my life? And what are the things that I want to work on? And you might have had some goals from a year ago or some months ago or 10 years ago. I know when I was like 17 and I was just getting into sort of planning my life, my goals have actually changed substantially since then. So I think it's good, especially like if you're going through a bit of a downward spiral or a bit of a depressive episode, to do that kind of value analysis. I'm not actually going to spend any more time on that because I think the most important thing for me, what I put the most effort into these days in order to be consistent and have shorter and fewer sort of depressive episodes, is to look at my structure. So I really started to think about this a lot when I was studying operating systems. You get these sorts of things like instruction sets and CPU scheduling, and it started to make me think of my own sort of day-to-day life in a very mechanical kind of way, in a way that is very similar to like a CPU executing one sort of operation at a time or something like that. There's no need for it to get that technical, but basically what I'm saying is if you are really, really struggling, like you've got some kind of a goal and you know where you want to get to, but you're just having difficulty getting there, What I suggest for you is to come up with some kind of structure, some kind of schedule. What this is going to look like is going to depend on you. Let me explain kind of what works for me and a couple different routes you could go, and hopefully you can just try different things out and see what works for you. So for me, I like a certain amount of structure, but not too much structure. Some people like to schedule almost every minute of their day, and I think that is fine. It doesn't really work for me because I find I'm never really able to follow that rigorous of a schedule because there's just too many things going on in my life, like having a significant other, having cats, having things pop up semi-randomly at work, having large fluctuations in my energy and focus levels, which is something I still have to deal with on a daily basis. So I prefer to have some kind of a structure, but to auto-regulate based on how I feel or just kind of whatever is popping up. So what does that structure kind of look like for me? The most important thing for me to be consistent is to have, generally speaking, an hour or two. This is going to change depending on what my lifestyle is. But right now I'm working full-time as a developer, so I can only manage about an hour or two of my day that is dedicated to certain things that I try to do every day. So this is where I suggest you at least get started. The most important thing for me is to get up at a regular time. It doesn't necessarily have to be super early. You don't have to be like me and wake up at 5 a.m. and have like dark circles under your eyes because you start work at 7 a.m. Whatever works for you. If you have a lot more spare time, or you just have a lifestyle where you can wake up at 8 a.m., that's fine. But what I'm trying to say here is the very first thing you do pretty much every day should be scheduled, should be rigorous. This is going to be difficult for some of you because I know some of you have a major issue with getting up early. Yeah, thank you, Google phone. What I suggest for you is you have to just work at this and practice. It's a skill you have to develop. Do what you need to do. If you have to set your alarm and then put it like across the room or something like that and force yourself to get up and turn your alarm off, if that's what it takes, do it. I don't have to do that anymore, but I had to for a couple years. Eventually, through practice, you get used to just getting up at the time specified and not falling back to sleep. So that's where I start with things. Get up at a regular time. The first hour or 2 hours, or if you have a lot more spare time, maybe you're unemployed or you just happen to have a lot more freedom in your schedule, gradually increase that to more like 4 hours a day, maybe 6 hours a day. I found for me, I had trouble being consistent and doing more than 6 hours a day, but that was pretty much including weekends. That's about a comfortable maximum for me. And when I say 6 hours, I mean a solid 6 hours. I don't mean 8 hours and half of it you spend watching YouTube or whatever. Since I'm working a full-time job, for me it's just at the moment 1 hour. During that hour, 2 hours. So during those 2 hours, I do schedule what I do. I write it down and I know ahead of time what I'm going to do. What works for me, I find nothing really wakes me up more than doing a workout pretty much about 20 minutes after I wake. I have about 15 or 20 minutes where I allow myself to basically wake up, check the news or something like that. I don't start watching YouTube videos or getting too carried away, but I give myself that 15 or 20 minute grace period to wake up. And then eventually I do a workout. Here's a really important thing here if you're going to try this. Try to do workouts which you can pretty much do on a bad day, on a day where you're not very motivated. If you have to, just walk back and forth in your apartment for 20 minutes. The key thing with adopting this sort of schedule is you have to be consistent with it. And oftentimes the only way to be consistent is to have very easy goals and requirements on a daily basis. If you're like, I'm just going to get up and I'm going to run 10 miles, every day kind of thing, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work for you. Even David Goggins has days off. Not very many, you know, much fewer than I do. But even that person who's super motivated, who you look up to, has days off. Because sometimes life just kicks you in the nuts, or whichever nether regions you happen to possess. So that's basically it. Especially when you're adopting a new schedule like this, start with really easy things. For me, just getting back into the swing of things this week, it's 10 to 20 minutes of exercise, and I basically do whatever the hell I want on that given day. So Monday, it was just doing a bunch of pull-ups. Tuesday, it was doing a bunch of dips and then some push-ups. Wednesday, it was doing a leg day again. Today, it was doing burpees, essentially, because that's just what I felt like doing. So I know ahead of time, okay, I've got a couple different options. The point is to get the blood flowing. And there's some research to show that working out in the morning specifically will improve your sleep quality overnight. Okay. Whatever your schedule happens to be, whatever your morning routine happens to be, that's when I really suggest that you sort of begin with your consistency. After about an hour for me of working out and meditating, maybe doing some breathing exercises if I feel like it, I now have about an hour of my day to study something or do some kind of work that's my own stuff apart from doing my professional work. And that's all I really do, and I'm happy with it. Because you know what? It's better to be consistent with like an hour a day than it is to do a heroic effort maybe once or twice a week and then fall off the bandwagon. So that's really the key message here is figure out some kind of structure. Don't necessarily do what I do. Don't necessarily do what David Goggins does. Especially if you're new to this, set the bar really low at a really achievable rate and try to be consistent. And what you'll find is after a couple weeks of being consistent with sort of like these minimal efforts, then the structure will start to... There's something which one of my teachers said, which was a very great way of describing this. If you take care of your personal principles, your principles will take care of you, and then it'll be less of a grind and you'll sort of do it more automatically. Even on days where you feel like crap, eventually, if you get the habit going and the structure is there for you and you've been consistent with it, it will carry you forward. So this is the main thing I suggest, especially for coders. If you're beginning and you're just trying to be consistent, if you're like I was for years and you're trying to learn coding while working a day job that has nothing to do with coding, an hour or two a day, even start at 30 minutes, be consistent, and that's what worked for me. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck and peace out, cousins.